The ninth house, or Dharma Bhava, Philosophy, Purpose, Truth, Aries Rising, Part 1. The fire that must align with meaning. Aries Rising surges through life with urgency, instinct, and a will to conquer. Ruled by Mars, this is a chart of initiative, direct, goal-oriented, and fiercely independent. These natives seek to shape the world through action. But the ninth house, Dharma Bhava, confronts them with Sagittarius, a sign also ruled by Jupiter, concerned not with battle, but with meaning. Here, the warrior must become a pilgrim, the fighter must become a seeker. Where Aries asks, "What now?" Sagittarius in the ninth house responds, "Why at all?" This is a crucial juncture in the Aries journey, where instinct meets insight. Mars must now bow to Jupiter, not in defeat, but in reverence. The Aries rising, ever ready to leap into new frontiers, must now align that energy with a higher calling. Sagittarius in the ninth, the urge to expand through belief. Sagittarius here demands that Aries rising explore not just new lands, but new truths. While the Aries impulse is to act, the ninth house insists that actions have meaning. Sagittarius brings the force of ideals, philosophies, and moral frameworks. It compels Aries to examine, what do you stand for? What cause are you willing to serve beyond the self? This placement can lead to dynamic explorations, literal and intellectual. The native is pushed toward travel, higher learning, spiritual traditions, and global perspectives. The tendency to charge forward must now be tempered with reflection. A belief system must be forged, not inherited passively, but tested in fire. This is a placement that often triggers a lifelong quest to reconcile instinctual will with universal law. Jupiter as Lord. From bravery to belief. With Jupiter ruling this house, the process of Dharma is tied to expansion, generosity, and spiritual learning. If Jupiter is strong, the Aries native evolves from reactive to reflective, channeling their Mars-fueled ambition into teaching, writing, or traveling with purpose. They become activists for justice, philosophical warriors, or explorers of consciousness. If Jupiter is afflicted or misplaced, the native may cling to dogma, impose beliefs on others, or swing between restlessness and righteousness. Their search for truth may turn into a flight from responsibility. The lesson is to let faith grow, not as a reaction, but as a mature, lived philosophy. From conquest to coherence. The ninth house teaches Aries rising that power is incomplete without perspective. It's not enough to conquer the mountain, you must know why you climbed it. Sagittarius here pushes the native to integrate courage with conviction, to let moral clarity guide bold action. This often manifests as a life that begins in instinctive rebellion and matures into principled leadership. The native may be drawn to mentors, gurus, professors, or travel companions who awaken their dormant sense of purpose. With time, Aries learns that the truest conquest is that of the self, subduing the ego to serve a greater Dharma. Activation years and turning points. The ninth house activates for Aries rising at ages 9, 21, 33, 45, 57, 69, and 81. These are phases where fate tests their belief systems, often through travel, higher studies, legal or religious matters. At 21 or 33, they may take bold journeys, literal or philosophical, that forever shape their worldview. At 45 or 57, the challenge is to become the guide, to teach what they once sought. These years often confront them with moral dilemmas or opportunities to stand for something larger than personal ambition. It is in these moments they graduate from being reactionary to being visionary. The warrior's wisdom. In essence, Sagittarius in the ninth house transforms the Aries rising from a mere doer to a disciple of meaning. Dharma Bhava becomes the crucible where fire finds direction. The wisdom of Sagittarius doesn't dull Aries' flame, it gives it purpose. And in that union, the native discovers their true strength, not just to fight, but to believe. Not just to act, but to inspire. Not just to move, but to move others toward truth. The ninth house, or Dharma Bhava, Philosophy, Purpose, Truth, Aries Rising, Part 2. 8 most formative conjunctions in Sagittarius, where impulse must meet insight and action becomes belief. For Aries rising, the ninth house unfolds in Sagittarius, a domain of higher knowledge, purpose, and long-distance vision. This house demands meaning, while Aries lives for immediacy. Sagittarius, ruled by Jupiter, draws the native toward expansive frameworks, philosophy, law, spirituality, while Aries burns for experience, conquest, and action. These 8 conjunctions in Sagittarius sculpt the path where raw will refines into wisdom. Each one deepens the Aries native's understanding of why they do what they do. They mark turning points where the warrior becomes a seeker, where conquest must yield to coherence. Sun and Jupiter, leadership through vision or righteous blindness. This regal pairing magnifies charisma, purpose, and leadership through belief. For Aries Rising, it amplifies a desire to be seen as wise, noble, or morally guided. If benefic, it brings principled leadership, integrity, and a magnetic presence in educational or spiritual spaces. If afflicted, it can veer into arrogance, self-righteousness, or inflated beliefs. The shift happens when they realize authority isn't about being right. It's about being a light. Sun and Ketu, detached radiance or spiritual isolation. This ethereal conjunction dissolves the ego in the flames of higher purpose. For Aries Rising, it may bring a quest for meaning that strips worldly ambition. If benefic, it leads to spiritual leadership, past life wisdom, or inner peace beyond status. If afflicted, it may cause a crisis of purpose, identity detachment, or feeling invisible despite effort. Transformation comes when they stop chasing external validation and find purpose in presence. Jupiter and Saturn, structured wisdom or faith under restriction. This weighty conjunction challenges the balance between belief and discipline. For Aries Rising, it may manifest as ideological pressure, academic rigor, or spiritual maturity born of hardship. If benefic, it grants grounded wisdom, respect in scholastic or religious domains, and a moral backbone. If afflicted, it may breed rigidity, dogma, or guilt around personal beliefs. Growth lies in embracing frameworks without becoming confined by them. Jupiter and Rahu, expansive faith or inflated dogma. This conjunction turbocharges the desire for meaning. For Aries Rising, it may trigger fascination with exotic beliefs, foreign cultures, or spiritual thrill-seeking. If benefic, it offers charismatic teaching ability, adventurous scholarship, and global vision. If afflicted, it may lead to cultish thinking, moral superiority, or blind pursuit of abstract ideals. The breakthrough is when they stop seeking truth as spectacle and start embodying it as responsibility. Mercury and Jupiter, the sage's voice or preacher's trap. This intellectual alliance enhances philosophical expression and hunger for understanding. For Aries Rising, it can produce eloquence in teaching, writing, and debate. If benefic, it blends logic with vision, forming a mind that inspires others. If afflicted, it may skew toward over-explaining, self-righteousness, or intellectual arrogance. Wisdom awakens when they speak not to prove, but to uplift. Mercury and Ketu, silent intellect or mystic reasoning. This subtle pair bends logic toward the intuitive. For Aries Rising, it creates a philosophical mind that relies on inner knowing more than formal systems. If benefic, it grants poetic thought, insight into ancient texts, and the gift of spiritual storytelling. If afflicted, it may cause difficulty articulating beliefs, scatter the intellect, or disconnect reason from reality. Evolution begins when they stop trying to know truth and start letting it move through them. Venus and Jupiter, devotional elegance or idealistic romance. This gracious conjunction brings beauty to belief. For Aries Rising, it can manifest as love for wisdom, aesthetics and philosophy, or attraction to cultured, spiritually evolved partners. If benefic, it supports generosity, refined ethics, and joyous pursuit of purpose. If afflicted, it may romanticize ideology or confuse love with shared dogma. Transformation arises when they realize beauty is not the end, but the bridge to something greater. Mars and Jupiter, mission with might or zeal without restraint. This fiery conjunction unites the will to act with the will to believe. For Aries Rising, it is explosive, doubling down on their instinct to do something meaningful. If benefic, it yields brave service, visionary leadership, and dynamic teaching. If afflicted, it may lead to fanaticism, crusading behavior, or burnout in the name of ideals. The growth point is channeling power through purpose, not just passion. In summary, Sagittarius in the 9th house turns Aries' drive into direction. These conjunctions act like tuning forks, resonating with the native's desire for truth, but refining it through humility, dialogue, and reflection. Action becomes ethical. Conquest becomes context. Here, Aries Rising doesn't lose their fire. They learn to align it with wisdom. They become not just adventurers, but guides. Not just warriors, but mentors. In Dharma Bhava, the bold become believers. and belief, when integrated, becomes the highest form of courage. The ninth house or Dharma Bhava, philosophy, purpose, truth, Leo Rising Part 1. The radiance that must surrender to depth. Leo Rising strides into life with confidence, charisma, and a need to be seen. Governed by the sun, these natives live from the heart, expressive, proud, and purpose-driven. They often become leaders, creators, or role models, moved by the desire to leave a mark. But the ninth house, Dharma Bhava, opens for them in Aries, a sign ruled by Mars, where belief becomes action and purpose becomes a battlefield. This is where the noble lion must become the spiritual warrior, where pride must evolve into conviction, and where Dharma is not about applause, but about initiation. Aries in the ninth house gives Leo Rising a fiery relationship with truth. This is not a philosophical seeker of nuance, but a fighter for ideals, often blunt, urgent, and driven to do something with what they believe. While Leo radiates authority and charm, Aries injects a raw edge to their worldview. There is little patience for detached theorizing. They want belief systems that move them to act. Aries in the ninth, the Dharma of bold vision. Aries here brings passion, directness, and instinct into the higher realms of law, ethics, and spiritual purpose. For Leo Rising, this often manifests as a burning need to initiate, to pioneer their own path rather than follow inherited ones. They may question authority early in life, rejecting traditional religious structures in favor of personal truths discovered through confrontation, travel, or self-initiated study. There is a heroic tone to their belief system. Leo Rising with Aries in the ninth often sees life as a quest. Their spiritual or philosophical path is not just about peace or understanding. It's about action, challenge, and even battle. They are born to fight for meaning, to defend principles, to lead with clarity. Mars as Lord, from ego drive to ethical fire. Mars rules this house and brings courage, willpower, and intensity into the Dharma journey. If Mars is well placed, Leo Rising becomes a dynamic spiritual leader, a bold teacher, or a philosophical pioneer. They are the kind of people who rally others toward a cause or light the fire of conviction through personal example. If Mars is afflicted, however, belief becomes aggression. They may push ideologies without reflection, fight simply for the sake of winning, or act self-righteously in the name of purpose. Their spiritual growth lies in learning to temper zeal with humility, to let their fire illuminate, not burn. From spotlight to sacred fight. The ninth house teaches Leo Rising that purpose is not always glamorous, that real leadership means living one's ideals even when no one is watching. Aries here demands that the Leo ego be tempered, not by defeat, but by dedication. They are not here merely to shine, but to lead others through spiritual courage. They often thrive when given a cause, a philosophy to defend, a people to uplift, or a message to proclaim. But the real transformation begins when they understand that truth doesn't need performance, it needs integrity. Activation years and turning points. The ninth house activates for Leo Rising at ages 9, 21, 33, 45, 57, 69, and 81. These years bring confrontations with belief, either through travel, challenge, or ideological reckoning. At 21 or 33, they may step into a new philosophical or spiritual identity, often triggered by a bold decision or an act of defiance. At 45 or 57, they may emerge as spiritual leaders, those who have walked the fire and now guide others through it. Each of these moments calls for courage, not just to speak truth, but to live it, not just to command respect, but to earn it through righteous action. From crown to compass. Ultimately, Aries in the ninth house teaches Leo Rising that purpose must be forged in fire. That leadership means living the truth, not just speaking it. That belief is not a crown but a compass, and that the greatest legacy is not applause, but alignment. This is where the lion becomes the warrior, where light meets heat, where Dharma demands not performance, but passion with principle. And Leo Rising, no longer seeking validation, rises into something greater, a life lived with courage, clarity, and conviction. The ninth house or Dharma Bhava, philosophy, purpose, truth, Leo Rising Part 2. 8 most defining conjunctions in Aries, where the ego must take a stand for truth and fire must find its higher fight. For Leo Rising, the ninth house opens in Aries, a Mars-ruled domain of initiative, assertion, and pioneering belief. Here, the sun-ruled Leo native meets the raw heat of purpose. This house does not seek passive reflection or inherited doctrine. It demands action born of conviction. Aries in the ninth calls Leo to stop basking in personal glory and start leading with spiritual fire. These 8 conjunctions in Aries mark catalytic intersections, moments where belief becomes battle, where inspiration becomes movement, and where Dharma must be chosen, not inherited. Sun and Mars, heroic vision or spiritual arrogance. This fiery conjunction creates a fearless hunger for purpose. For Leo rising, it ignites a warrior's conviction, eager to stand for beliefs, speak boldly, and lead others into new ideological terrain. If benefic, it produces inspirational leaders, spiritual pioneers, or bold reformers. If afflicted, it may burn with egoic righteousness, lead to self-glorifying missions, or trigger unnecessary ideological conflict. Dharma ripens when they channel courage through conscience, not conquest. Sun and Jupiter, radiant integrity or inflated idealism. This noble pairing magnifies ethical leadership and magnanimity. For Leo rising, it imbues purpose with optimism, generosity, and moral authority. If benefic, it produces charismatic guides, teachers, and those who live with principled fire. If afflicted, it can breed overconfidence in one's worldview or a tendency to preach rather than practice. Their growth lies in learning that true purpose is not declared, but demonstrated through disciplined living. Mars and Jupiter, action in service of truth or dogmatic zeal. This dynamic conjunction makes the pursuit of meaning kinetic. For Leo rising, it fosters a bold, risk-taking attitude toward travel, education, or spiritual mission. If benefic, it bursts the philosophical crusader, those who act as ethical champions. If afflicted, it may lead to ideological aggression, missionary arrogance, or burnout in pursuit of grand visions. The lesson is to let purpose grow with the path, not override it. Mars and Saturn, disciplined fire or spiritual frustration. This challenging combination tests the patience of the inner warrior. For Leo rising, it brings delays or karmic resistance in their dharmic evolution. If benefic, it grants spiritual stamina, a hard-earned moral backbone, and leadership that endures. If afflicted, it creates inner conflict, desire to act blocked by fear or external control. Dharma awakens when they understand that the strongest flame is the one that burns slowly but steadily. Venus and Mars, passionate principles or desires in disguise. This sensual and assertive union brings beauty into the pursuit of meaning. For Leo rising, it can manifest as romantic or aesthetic belief systems, love affairs with ideologies, or attraction to inspiring teachers. If benefic, it harmonizes action with values, love with mission. If afflicted, it can blur personal desire with dharma, using belief to justify attraction or ego needs. Purpose clarifies when they learn to distinguish between inner drive and outer longing. Mercury and Mars, sharp conviction or verbal combat. This intense mental pair brings speed, clarity, and fire to communication. For Leo rising, it creates persuasive speech, bold opinions, and a need to debate or defend truth. If benefic, it yields inspirational teachers or dynamic writers. If afflicted, it may provoke ideological conflict, impatience with opposing views, or blunt communication. Dharma deepens when they realize that truth doesn't always need volume, it needs vision. Mercury and Jupiter, inspired logic or preaching mindset. This cerebral and expansive conjunction supports eloquence in philosophy, teaching, and spiritual frameworks. For Leo rising, it can inspire lifelong learners, public speakers, or mentors in systems of knowledge. If benefic, it blends enthusiasm with wisdom. If afflicted, it may lead to inflated rhetoric, oversimplified ideologies, or intolerance toward nuance. Wisdom unfolds when they balance fiery conviction with curiosity and humility. Venus and Jupiter, charismatic belief or idealized righteousness. This gracious pairing bestows charm and magnetism to one's dharma. For Leo rising, it supports radiant expression of values, perhaps through art, teaching, or inspirational leadership. If benefic, it attracts followers, brings harmony to ethics, and encourages living beautifully with meaning. If afflicted, it may idealize spiritual vanity, create unrealistic moral expectations, or equate popularity with righteousness. Evolution begins when they use beauty to serve the soul, not just the image. In summary, Aries in the ninth house demands Leo rising transform from performer to pioneer. These conjunctions are initiations, each asking them to stop waiting for approval and start standing for what they believe. Their dharma isn't abstract. It's embodied, bold, and activated through choice and risk. This is the arena where the solar ego meets the Martian mission, where the heart must learn to serve a cause greater than itself, and where Leo rising discovers legacy is not left through dominance. It's carved through disciplined passion, principled action, and the courage to be the first to live the truth they claim to seek. The ninth house, or Dharma Bhava, philosophy, purpose, truth, Sagittarius rising, part 1. The vision that must return to its source. Sagittarius rising steps into life with purpose-driven momentum. Ruled by Jupiter, these natives are naturally inclined toward expansion, exploration, and meaning-making. They are born seekers, drawn to distant horizons, higher knowledge, and ethical clarity. But for the archer, the ninth house, Dharma Bhava, falls in Leo, ruled by the sun. Here, Jupiter's endless outward reach is confronted by Leo's call for inner sovereignty. This is where the philosopher must become the sovereign, where truth is no longer merely sought in books, temples, or journeys, but reflected in the self. Leo in the ninth house adds radiance, nobility, and moral confidence to Sagittarius rising's Dharma path. This is not a quiet spiritual lane. It is a throne room of ethical leadership. The Sagittarius native is being asked to not only believe, but to embody belief with courage, visibility, and personal conviction. Leo doesn't want abstraction. It wants alignment. It wants the Sagittarian mind to shine as a source of inspiration, not just analysis. Leo in the ninth, the Dharma of inspired authority. Leo brings heart, dignity, and expressive clarity into the house of higher purpose. For Sagittarius rising, this creates a strong desire to lead with philosophy, to be not just a student of truth, but its ambassador. Their Dharma is inseparable from their identity. They're not content to follow others' belief systems. They need to own their worldview, stand by it, and share it boldly. They often feel called to teach, inspire, preach, or guide, especially when it allows them to stand in the light of self-actualized wisdom. This placement also gives a sense of karmic responsibility around truth. They may feel fated to represent certain ideals, cultures, or principles with pride. Their journey isn't just about gaining knowledge, it's about carrying that knowledge with honor. Sun as Lord, from idealism to living light. With the sun ruling the ninth house, the Dharma path becomes deeply personal. If the sun is strong, Sagittarius rising becomes an exemplar, someone who carries wisdom with charisma, clarity, and soulful power. Their very presence uplifts, teaches, and influences. If the sun is afflicted, however, they may struggle with ego in their belief systems, confusing inner certainty with external validation, or mistaking charisma for truth. The true challenge of Leo in the ninth is humility within brightness. The native must learn that the sun shines best when it illuminates others. That the higher self must guide, not dominate. That living truth is not performance, it is radiance from within, from mission to embodiment. The ninth house teaches Sagittarius rising that purpose is not just in pursuit, it is in presentation. That the ideals they chase must live through how they speak, lead, and walk into a room. They are asked to refine their beliefs, not just through study, but through integrity. Often, they become natural role models, those who are watched, quoted, followed. Their words may teach, but it is their dignity that proves. And so, their Dharma is not just to understand meaning, but to personify it. Activation years and turning points. The ninth house activates for Sagittarius rising at ages 9, 21, 33, 45, 57, 69, and 81. These are years of moral illumination, intellectual self-discovery, or encounters with mentors who reflect their potential. At 21 or 33, they may step into leadership roles within belief communities or redefine their spiritual identity with courage. At 45 or 57, they may become the beacon, guiding others through clarity of purpose and ethical example. Each cycle brings opportunities to speak their truth, not just for personal growth, but for the growth of those around them. From seeking to shining, ultimately, Leo in the ninth house teaches Sagittarius rising that the search for meaning must lead back to the self. That truth is not always a distant philosophy. It can be a personal standard. That one's beliefs should not just be correct, they must be inspiring. This is where the wandering sage becomes a spiritual monarch, where knowledge becomes embodiment, where Sagittarius rising, always looking outward, finally discovers that the greatest light was meant to shine from within. The ninth house, or Dharma Bhava, philosophy, purpose, truth, Sagittarius Rising Part 2. 8 most defining conjunctions in Leo, where belief must be embodied and wisdom must lead with light. For Sagittarius Rising, the 9th house lies in Leo, a sign of radiance, self-expression, and dignified authority. Governed by the sun, Leo in this house doesn't allow beliefs to remain abstract or impersonal. It demands the Sagittarius native embody their truth in a way that inspires, teaches, and leads. These 8 conjunctions in Leo activate moments where inner knowing must become outer presence, where ideals must be lived visibly, and where philosophy becomes personality. The archer must now step into the light, not just seeking the horizon, but becoming a horizon for others. Sun and Jupiter, moral radiance, or inflated idealism. This regal combination brings the chart ruler into conjunction with the ruler of the 9th house. For Sagittarius Rising, it amplifies confidence in belief, charisma in teaching, and a deep drive to live ethically. If benefic, it supports noble leadership, graceful mentors, and those who guide others with genuine wisdom. If afflicted, it can exaggerate moral superiority, spiritual entitlement, or pride in philosophical difference. Dharma unfolds when they realize that inspiration does not require dominance, just presence. Sun and Mercury, intellectual authority or ego-driven logic. This classic Buddhaditya yoga sharpens communication and gives voice to inner convictions. For Sagittarius Rising, it enables articulate teaching, persuasive speech, and philosophical clarity. If benefic, it makes them natural educators who translate complex ideas into accessible insights. If afflicted, it may result in dogmatic preaching, ego masking as intellect, or a need to win debates over embracing dialogue. The turning point comes when they speak not to impress, but to enlighten. Sun and Venus, radiant values or vanity in philosophy. This harmonious pairing blends identity with value systems. For Sagittarius Rising, it infuses their beliefs with aesthetic grace, love for culture, and a need for ethical beauty. If benefic, it leads to a charismatic embodiment of values, someone who lives what they love. If afflicted, it may create a tendency to moralize beauty or to pursue popularity over depth in spiritual or ethical matters. The Dharma matures when they realize that how they embody truth is just as important as what they believe. Sun and Mars, purposeful action or philosophical aggression. This fiery conjunction activates boldness and conviction. For Sagittarius Rising, it turns the 9th house into a battlefield of ideas, where beliefs are fought for, led from the front, and defended without hesitation. If benefic, it produces dynamic teachers, activist thinkers, or spiritual warriors. If afflicted, it may express as combative righteousness, ideological bullying, or burnout in the pursuit of moral conquest. Purpose refines when they remember that strength and belief must be guided by compassion, not conquest. Sun and Rahu, karmic brilliance or inflated ideology. This magnetic pairing can bring global recognition or inner unrest. For Sagittarius Rising, it amplifies the desire to shine as a visionary, an intellectual authority, or an icon of moral reform. If benefic, it creates leaders in innovation, intercultural dialogue, or New Age philosophy. If afflicted, it may distort Dharma through arrogance, obsessive need for attention, or manufactured charisma. Dharma aligns when they surrender to genuine purpose rather than performance. Sun and Saturn, disciplined wisdom or burdened identity. This solemn conjunction brings weight to the role of belief. For Sagittarius Rising, it can manifest as karmic responsibility to uphold tradition, lead ethically, or structure moral systems. If benefic, it produces noble mentors, wise statesmen, or ethical reformers who act with integrity. If afflicted, it may create a burden of duty, fear of expression, or suppression of natural philosophical joy. Growth happens when they learn to carry responsibility without sacrificing radiance. Sun and Ketu, detached sovereignty or shadowed purpose. This introspective combination draws the light of belief inward. For Sagittarius Rising, it can result in a quiet spiritual nobility, someone who leads by example, not proclamation. If benefic, it bestows ancient wisdom, self-contained dharma, and detachment from ego, even while fulfilling public roles. If afflicted, it may cause disconnection from belief, isolation in teaching, or reluctance to claim one's truth. Dharma is reawakened when they realize that humility is not retreat, it is the soul's dignity. Venus and Jupiter, philosophical grace, or righteous pleasing. This generous conjunction merges values and faith. For Sagittarius rising, it fosters a love for devotional beauty, refined ethics, and cultural or spiritual integration. If benefic, it gives them the gift of unifying hearts through belief. Gracious teachers, artists of meaning, or storytellers of sacred truth. If afflicted, it may romanticize philosophy, overindulge in feel-good doctrines, or cling to harmonious illusions. Evolution begins when they see that not all truth feels good, but all real beauty must serve something higher. In summary, Leo in the 9th house asks Sagittarius rising not just to know truth, but to live it, shine it, and lead with it. These conjunctions mark thresholds where belief becomes embodiment, where seeking transforms into becoming. The teacher is now also the performer. The philosopher becomes a role model, and Dharma, no longer abstract, becomes radiant action. This is the house where the preacher must walk their own sermon, where vision must find the spine to stand tall, and where Sagittarius rising discovers that the brightest path isn't the one found at the edge of the world, it's the one they choose to light with their own fire.